that would be the eventful history. Then there's the personification of history. So I have in my personal background, Reverend John the Baptist Spratlin. So Reverend John the Baptist Spratlin, Ora Price, and now even Dr. Lois Price Spratlin is represented in this kinara, because those are our ancestors. Those are the men and women who have now transitioned, become part of the great afterlife, and they're symbolized by this kinara, which derives from the Zulu concept of nkulu nkulu. Sema nkulu nkulu. Now that's not Kiswahili, that's Zulu, but I didn't hear it quite like I needed to. So nkulu nkulu. Nkulu nkulu. Wonderful. Now that's Zulu, and it references parent stock. Parent stock, and so that's the notion of, and so everybody here has, theoretically, everybody here has nkulu nkulu from the Zulu concept. We all have a parent stock. We all have a derivative personhood from which we sprang. And then on the mkeka not only stands the kinara, but the Kikome Cha Moja. And this is really, really important, because the Kikome Cha Moja references the significance of unity in African history. One of the things that, part of that untold story that I mentioned, is the story of Ma'afa, and I've referenced it several times, and I want you to know that word as well. So Ma'afa is M-A-A-F-A, Ma'afa.
Ma'afa.
Okay, and that is the great disaster, the great tragedy, and of course it references the enslavement period, the nadir of world African history, the low point, and in it and during it, in order to justify it, Africans were denied personhood. That's really, really important. So even the legal statutes in colonial America denied Africans the state of being people, which is why they could be treated like ox. And so the notion, and by the way, that was to the point that on the plantation, most of us haven't studied plantation life, but I can tell you it was an amazing, stunning, shocking, almost unfathomable gumbo of horror and happy, all wrapped up in a single ball of tragedy. And the horror and happy is symbolized by, for example, the record that comes out of Ma'afa during the Great Jubilee. And of course, the Great Jubilee is what Lerone Bennett referenced as the period during the immediate aftermath of the war between the states. And so the Confederates and the Confederates and the Union had that big battle. They call it a civil war, but I've never seen war as civil, so I can't call it that. But they had this tremendous war of great misery. But for African Americans, of course, it was the Great Jubilee, because by siding with the North to save itself as a single collection of states, then the great unspoken negotiation was, yes, we will send 250,000 soldiers to fight in that effort, as long as at the end of the deal there is no more enslavement. And to its credit, the Union kept that promise, pretty much. And so, but in its aftermath, one of the features that shows the happiness piece of Ma'afa was the way that so many Africans coming out of the enslavement period sought marriage. It's really an amazing story, and education. Two very unique, related, amazing stories. But the ball of horror included such things as punishments where when a marriage wasn't recognized, but when two Africans who were considered themselves together, when one was being punished, the agreement was, and the challenge was, and the expectation was, that while Africans would be gathered to watch this punishment, watch this beating, no one was to shed a tear. And should they do so, they too would be beaten. And during that beating, no one should shed a tear. And should they do so, then that person would be beaten. So we have this collection of horror. So that then, of course, creates fragmentation and disunity. And so this Kikombe cha Umoja, or the Cup of Unity, references the significance of unity in the African American and global African experience. To the global African experience, let's point this out. During that same Ma'afa period, and I'll leave that shortly because I know my time is not on Ma'afa, and I have there's limited time that we have together. But that's an important piece, which was not the beginning of African history, but a disruption of African history. What it did was, for example, during that period, we note the significance of the role that African Americans play in global politics right now. Witness Mr. Obama. That's an important piece. Witness even my sister, I guess, as an ambassador. There is a important role that African Americans play in world history as we speak. But you know what? Here's what's interesting. Only about 5% of the Africans ripped from the African continent landed in North America. So what that means is, since my wife's people can count back 17 generations, that's one of their developmental charges. That's one of their developmental charges, is to count back 17 generations. And many people in this room can count back 17 generations. But Dad and I, my brother, we can't. But here's what we do know. We do know that 17 generations ago, we were connected to people who are now in Guatemala, Jamaica, Chile, Cuba, and actually we're consanguinely connected to those people. So we're just a small offshoot of folks that were taken to North America. Just a very small group of people, 5%. That's a very small. So we're connected to a larger story. So that larger story is also referenced in the Kikombe cha Umoja, the Cup of Unity. So we can say that together. Kikombe cha Umoja. Kikombe cha Umoja.
Kikombe cha Umoja.
Excellent. And so we're also learning Kiswahili as well. This is good. So my daughter cited the Zawadi. I guess I'm so happy because I don't have to get her anything but a book, according to what she said, this holiday season. Because she said the Zawadi translates as book. Actually, book is kitabu. So if that's all I was on the hook for, I would be a happy man. It turns out that Zawadi is bigger than that. Zawadi is gifts. So we say Zawadi. Zawadi is gifts. And of course, the gifts here are represented. The reason why she cites books is she's absolutely right. Books are a prized project in our home, and I'm sure many of yours. And I always appreciate coming through here and seeing the libraries here on this floor and on the floor upstairs, because books are certainly a prized commodity where important knowledge is stored. But that's only one of the expectations during Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa celebrants also expect that there would be an African artifact, some image of Africa given, and here we have Ngoma that's represented the drum, because the recognition is that in the project of discouraging and disuniting African Americans, in that project, Africa continues to be held up as an image of starvation and disease. And so all the stories we get out of Africa now are on Ebola and some colonial regimes' chaos, or neo-colonial regimes' chaos. So what we do is we give something of lasting beauty that moves out of the African continent, that derives specifically from Africa, because we want to be reminded that African beauty and excellence is, in fact, the prominent story. It's the prominent truth, even if it's not the prominent story. Does that make sense? It's the prominent truth. If any of you, and many of you, I'm sure, have been to Africa, and so you know and you know people who've gone if you haven't been, and so you know that the prominent story of Africa is beauty. So that's the Zawadi. So we've talked about Mkeka, we've talked about Kinara, we've talked about Zawadi, and we've talked about Kikombe cha Umoja. So that's 4, right? Now there's 5 others. So there's, as my daughter said, the Muhindi represents ears of corn. There are the number of ears of corn on the Kwanzaa set that there are children in the home. And then we have the Mazao, which is the crops. And the crops represent, again, that harvest concept. But of course, African Americans left the farm fields predominantly in what decade of the 20th century? First decade, I heard. Any other good?
Third, fourth.
No fair.
Third and fourth.
No fair.
Just a question.
Of course, so we heard the reference to Great Migration. So yes, there was a Great Migration, a move from the south to the north, and it, of course, spanned several decades, many decades, in fact. Most of the 20th century, certainly most of the 20th century. However, there was one particular decade that's really important in understanding the condition of the urban location and urban plight and blight of African Americans, kind of a seminal event and a seminal decade that I always like to communicate as a priority. So I'll give you, if I had more time, I massaged the concept. So I'll share this, that it was the 40s. And what was going on in the 40s? What was significant about that? Just any guesses? World War II also, and what goes with war? What goes with war? Industry, right. Industry comes with war. And so industrialization went to the farms. And so when industrialization went to the farms where masses of African Americans were, what single machine might have had the greatest impact on essentially disemploying millions of African American farmers?
Tractor.
The tractor, and particularly not just the tractor, but
Combine harvester.
which harvested what? Cotton. That's right. Harvested cotton. So that was in 1944 that those combines, cotton-picking combines, got to farms in the South, and that's what disemployed millions and millions of African Americans. And actually, this is a part of my brother's PhD story. So he's more of an expert on this story than I am. But this is a really important piece that then talks about the African presence and the particular challenge of employment, particularly the imbalance, the income imbalance between African American men and African American women, and those things. So we have then the counter to the story of poverty and ugliness is the story of beauty and ngoma, which is music and healing, and so that's represented in this Zawadi. We talked about Muhindi, then the Mazao is the crops. So we have this industrial experience. So what we then do is we conceptualize harvest to mean all good things that have happened during the course of the year. Okay? So then let's see. Did you complete where are you with that book? Are you ready to talk about that? I don't know if you have that story. Okay. Okay, January 1st. All right. But what was your milestone in the book this year?
Well, just getting into my series edit.
Okay, so to his credit, then Dr. Price Bradley got his second book to his editor. Now that would be an example of harvest as we conceptualize harvest. That is the year's achievement. Does that make sense? We're really broadening the notion from agricultural reaping, right, to a broader construct of, well, what happened this year? So then tell me, at 701? 725, what was one of the accomplishments of your community this year?
The building got full.
The building got full. Okay, so insofar as the building got full, that would be represented, that achievement, that milestone would be represented in the mazal as a harvest of the year, an achievement of the year. Okay, and then we have the Bendera ya Taifa, which is the national standard, and that of course comes from a different era in African American history. In the certainly the beginning of the Great Migration, the flourishing of Harlem, and part of the flourishing of Harlem was this wonderful activity called a political and economic achievement called the movement of Marcus Garvey. And during the course of that movement, this standard was established in response to a particular experience at the time. So popular media had a song singing, "Everybody has a flag but the coon." And so in response to that that experience, then the Garvey movement created this standard as a way to again symbolize our staying together, being together, and enjoying life together. So I say that we have these symbols before us. We have the celebration of Kwanzaa.
7 principles.
And so then all of this was built around the notion of the Mishimasaba. The Mishimasaba, or the 7 candles, represents the 7 principles. And the 7 principles are the notion of the foundation of moving from ideals to behavior. And so when we look to have expectations of each other as African Americans and as global Africans to participate in a global community, we want to have expectations of each other. And so one of those expectations is that we would behave in a way that that allows us to be together. And so that is represented by this candle, which is named for the principle of umoja. And that means unity. So again, umoja, which means unity. And then there is kujichagulia, which is a reference to the notion of self-determination. That is important for Africans who had a period in their history where they were named and defined by others, to name and define themselves. And that is what inspired my taking on of the name Kalafani Mwamba, to my dad's point, is this principle here, kujichagulia, or self-determination. And then there is this mshuma, which represents ujima, which represents collective work and responsibility. The notion that if something is to be brought into the world and done well and done sustainably, then it will need to be done with collective work, and where many people take responsibility for the work getting done. And then there is Ujamaa, which is also a reference to the great Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, who also came to prominence in the anti-colonial era in Tanzania, and built his nation around the notion and essentially separated his nation developmentally, economically, using that primary principle of Ujamaa, of cooperative economics. And then there is Nia, which is symbolized by or represents the principle of purpose. And the principle Nia is one of those things that kind of solidifies the idea that there should be a unified direction. Periodically, African Americans should come together. And I want to encourage you to encourage the African Americans you know to consider in experiencing Kwanzaa around this whole question of what is the purpose for African Americans collectively, and seeking to identify and answer that question. Then there's Kumba, And Kumba is this notion of creativity. Out of the mouths of babes. So I am corrected. Kuumba. Actually, I think it's Kuumba, is it not?
It is Kuumba.
Kuumba.
To create.
Okay, to create. Then after Kuumba is this notion of imani, yes, which is faith. So imani, faith.
Faith.
Imani,
Imani.
faith, which is to believe in all our hearts, in our leaders, our teachers, our parents, and our guides in the righteousness and victory of the work that we have to do together. And on that, I'm happy to take any questions or explore any ideas from this conversation. Thanks so much.